What's up, world? So, Elon Musk just bought Twitter. What does that mean? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Well, we're going to discuss it a little bit. I'm going to share some of my thoughts. Okay. Now, let's look at this news. This is today, 55 minutes ago. Twitter's board accepted billionaire Elon Musk's offer to buy the social media company and take it private, the company confirmed. The announcement ends a weeks-long saga Musk kicked off when he offered to buy the company at $54.20 per share, his best and final. Twitter's board sought to fend off a hostile takeover by adopting a so-called poison pill. Okay, so clearly they've changed their minds on that. This is from the 21st, but I think this is important to look at because it informs us as to Musk's motivations and mentality for this move. If our Twitter bid succeeds, we will defeat the spam bots or die trying. And the follow-up almost immediately was, and authenticate all real humans. Okay, so as you can tell by what I've liked and what I haven't liked, my take on this is a little bit nuanced. And then this is from today, just a bit ago. Yes, free speech is the bedrock of a functioning democracy, and Twitter is the digital town square where matters vital to the future of humanity are debated, said Mr. Musk. I also want to make Twitter better than ever by enhancing the product with new features, making the algorithms open source to increase trust, defeating the spam bots, and authenticating all humans. Twitter has tremendous potential. I look forward to working with the company and the community of users to unlock it. Okay, so we've got inside Mr. Musk's head just a little bit. So that can start informing us as to what his motivations are. Okay, now he's claimed that he's a free speech absolutist. What does that mean? Well, there's not a lot of wiggle room on that. It means pretty much whatever's legally accepted as being okay to say is just that, okay to say. Again, he says he wants to remove bots and verify all humans. Okay, so those are his main goals. Speaking on those really quickly, I would say the whole free speech absolutist approach, that's the only real approach to get to a real egalitarian discourse. In terms of removing bots, that I think will eventually maintain, but in the initial course, just allow for the sanctity of this public square idea that is being put out. Removing bots will also protect users' privacy. Okay. In terms of things like all the crypto scamming bots, which anyone who uses Twitter has encountered. In terms of the verify all humans, that would obviously increase privacy. One major con, though, is anonymity. There might be some concerns there. As Twitter stands, clearly you can use it anonymously, as is the case with the many websites around the internet. But if there were a system that required some type of verification, a human verification from all users, we would really have to talk more about what that would actually entail. Are we talking about some kind of biometric thing where you have to show an eye? Would you have to do a face scan? Do you have to, is it a CAPTCHA? So we would definitely have to talk more about that, because I definitely think a part of using a digital public space or public square like Twitter, part of that, you're entailed to the option of anonymity, I think, because that doesn't really, how should I put this? The one speaking anonymously doesn't preclude them from having their opinions, as long as those opinions aren't calls to action for violence and things like that, which is part of what I'll get into. So free speech that actually allows for the true meritocracy of thought. What do I mean by that? Well, true things will tend to receive support. Okay, good, ethical, logical, factual ideas will tend to be upvoted, liked, receive support. Those things will rise. Whereas bad, unethical, illogical, unfactual ideas will tend to be naturally pushed out simply due to the rise, the buoyancy of the truthful content. Obviously, things like just opinions might not factor into that framework. Is it, like if somebody just says, "I don't like hot dogs," how can you objectively say that's a good or bad tweet? So things like that, I don't think really apply. Nonetheless, they would still fall under that umbrella of free speech, and as long as there were no as long as we can ensure a true numbers game, so to speak, meaning no manipulation, no throttling of accounts or shadow banning, no paid bots to mass like things to give it this artificial impression of support. If everything could be true, accurate numbers game, then this would lead to an honest expression of humanity, frankly, good and bad. And I think that is overall a good thing. People need to know what's out there in terms of perspectives, mentalities, and that, yeah, I stand by that 100%. What would be some cons of this free speech absolutist sort of approach? Well, at times, fringe or extremist ideas will unfortunately gain traction. That being said, I think a large part of the mentality we need to have going forward is one of optimism, one of faith, one of hope. And I don't mean that in a sort of religious sense. I mean a faith that good ideas and good actors will use the platform well in good faith. And essentially having this hope that in this natural, open maelstrom of ideas, the good ideas, so to speak, will rise within that numbers game that I was talking about a second ago. Again, this requires that honest actors are using this site. And when I say that, I'm not saying ban all trolls, because a troll position that's a part of free speech. Satire or snide comments, insults, all that. It's unfortunately a part of that. I'm talking about this sort of one vote per user idea. No botting, no artificial paid followers, paid likes on something to give it this artificial impression of more support than it really has. If we could eliminate those types of instances, then having a true radical space for the most part, any and all free speech to occur, I think would be an overall positive. Okay. Now, clearly, we would still need to have some reason, some type of limits, just like there are limits within the law. The whole yelling fire in a crowded theater idea still would apply. So there would still be a ban on illegal speech, so to speak, and that would be, I guess, dictated by the greater political precedent that's set at the time. So that might be different in 5 or 10 years if Twitter's even still a thing. And things like calls to action that would lead to violence. So obviously we wouldn't want people saying like, or a good example would be somebody saying, I dislike X country or X type of people. While that might be, fairly bigoted, and many would say that, I still think someone should be free to say that, because a common response under would be something like, well, I like that culture, I like that country. And we would see that numbers game play out. We would see, in my opinion, overwhelmingly more support for the more open, ethical, accepting speech. Okay. So I think something like that, although controversial, should be accepted. Something like, I dislike X country, we should bomb them, right? Or I dislike X people, we should get rid of them all. That we can't allow, obviously, because those are calls to action. That's an attempt to inspire other people to go out in the world and perform an action. In this case, an action that will cause harm. So we obviously wouldn't allow something like that. That would actually be stochastic terrorism. It's essentially putting out a call where you're uncertain of the effects that it could have. And in this case, it's clearly alluding to something negative happening. So those kind of things would, not be allowed. I'm perfectly fine with that. I think that's a good thing. As it is, I think many of the people who are fearful of this hostile takeover, right, which is just a business term. It's not. We're not really on the battlefield or anything like that. Those people tend to, from what I've seen, assert that we need more censorship because censorship will allow us to stamp out or stifle more fringe or radical or extreme voices. And while that might be true in the extreme short term, I have the firm belief that overall censorship only leads to retreat, resolve, and concentration. So all you do is you force this group you're labeling as extremists, you force them to retreat into more sort of clandestine corners of the internet or even of the real world, and they simply harden their resolve because now this dichotomy, this battle, is cemented in their mind. You've caused them to entrench themselves in their position, right? And then what you get is a concentration. You have echo chambers forming and people sort of bouncing the same unnuanced ideas and takes back and forth, and that just leads to, again, a concentration. And then you have these sudden sort of bubbling overs, these explosions where things penetrate into the mainstream suddenly, and it seems like it's out of left field, and that's only because your censorship efforts have again led to this retreat, resolve, and concentration. So instead, what we need to do is not only allow for discourse, but encourage discourse. This might sound controversial, this might be a hot take, but we actually want people to express whatever these views are in public, in the most public forum, especially if they would be forced to be accountable and have their digital identity, attached to these opinions. I know I talked about anonymity earlier, but if we are going to go to this road of full verification and name to a picture to a face to an account, then I would advocate for that. I think we should have that complete open space where people can deliver their bad, wrong, hateful, spiteful, illogical takes. And what will happen, what should happen, is a resounding retort from everybody else, and seeing that numbers game play out in public, seeing that discourse play out in public, that will change minds a lot more than forcing people to go and hide and just have those beliefs fester and remain unchallenged. Discourse allows for change, not censorship. Okay. Let me know what you think about these thoughts, what you think about Elon Musk's new bid to be the king of free speech on the internet or whatever. And welcome agreement, disagreement. If you think there's some critical angle I'm missing here, if you think I'm being very naive, if you think I am employing nuance, whatever your take is, let me know. And discourse, that's the name of the game. So let's create some. Okay. I don't have a catchy outro yet, so oh well.